Over the last 10 years, I've helped nonprofit organizations raise over $1 billion. Nonprofits like Trevor Project, Make-A-Wish, Best Friends Animal Society, and Stop Soldier Suicide. My name is Nick Black. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you the non-obvious lessons. Not from a book, not from watching a video, but from doing, from running campaigns, seeing what doesn't work. So many times I've earned a PhD in what does not work. So let's actually focus on what does and what moves donors today. Let's talk about what we do today. So we take a look at our campaigns, what we did last year. We dust it off. And we really start to figure out the mix of channels and communication efforts, whether it's direct mail, text, or email. We execute those asks and we're optimizing the margins. Hopefully we can drive a couple incremental changes. Unfortunately, in optimizing those margins, we're on a sinking ship with the structural decline. There's a Nonprofit Pro article of last month in April 2026, and while it stated that individual giving went up, largely on the backs of the high net worth, participation rate declined. Again, leaves about 3.9%. So where we're at is that we're working the file harder, yet we're not getting returns out of it. Many orgs are in a death spiral. As performance goes down, we send more. We send more, people respond less. As such, sending more reduces performance. At an individual level, but across industry, with all of us doing this, what we're finding is that less people want to get involved, which means that costs are going up. It's getting more expensive to add new supporters and new donors to our current cycle. Why? Because they know what they're in for. So the asset isn't a table or file. The asset is your supporter graph. The people who have told you their story and who have shared how they want to give, how they want to get involved, is really how you're going to move your mission forward. These people are your rocks. Today, very few organizations take a look at those they built relationships with, and it's a tiny graph, yet they have a massive file. Winning orgs are flipping the ratio. So it makes sense. We want to build relationships with the average people because know those relationships will yield donors, yield dollars, and yield more data. So we want money, we ask for advice. The question you're probably asking yourselves, how do I get new supporters? Section 2. Okay, time to be honest. How do we treat social media today? We probably hire a 25-year-old, 26-year-old, and they talk at people. And we focus on followers and impressions and likes. I've yet to meet anyone who wants to be paid in likes or followers. So frankly, I don't care. Maybe most of you don't either. We rely on email, text messaging. We rely on direct mail. And it's great. Why? Because it's owned. We can measure. We know what it is, right? It's ours. The problem is, it's not where your supporters are. Whether you like it or not, I think it's over 80% of Americans are spending 2 hours a day on social media. And those are the most conservative numbers we can find. So social media is a black box. We keep putting effort into it, but what do we get out? Well, the key to unlock that black box is direct messaging. And the big leap of faith that you have to take is that the powers that be that own social media, there's Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, they care about more about their bottom line, about shareholder value than they do you. And if you believe that, which you should, they don't want you to leave their platform. When you send people out of their network, they lose money. When you keep people in their network, they make money. As such, direct messaging allows people that are scrolling in Instagram or Facebook to stay in that channel. So what email does for your website, right? When you're scrolling around the website, you want to make a gift, you want to become a volunteer, there's a conversion layer. That conversion layer is email. So what email does to monetize your website across mission or fundraising, what direct messaging does to social media. What email does to be able to turn website traffic into value is what direct messaging can do for social media. And you just have to turn it on. You wouldn't have a website without email. So why would you have social media without direct messaging? For one example, the nonprofit that I co-founded, Stop Soldier Suicide, we have a peer-to-peer ask, a peer-to-peer experience. And we put people in direct messaging journey. We've seen over 92% open rate with 10,000 people and over $600,000 raised. So now that we understand that your supporters don't care less that this shifted to social, and social is a black box to keep being direct messaging, how do we actually create the messages where it's not spammy? Okay, section 3. I have a very good friend who's a development officer. He's been in the game for 10, 15 years, and he shared something pretty profound with me. He said, Nick, if you want money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money. And most of us know this to be true. We need to build relationships. You don't walk up to someone and say, hey, my name's Nick, would you give me $30? You ask them about themselves. Yet today, what we run is a funnel. And funnels are great, but we're working with relatively large numbers. And as we work with relatively large numbers, what we're doing is optimizing for each stage of the funnel. We then acquire, right? We acquire these people, and then we send them an email that they're probably not going to open. If they do open, they're not going to click. If they do click, they're not going to go to the website. If they do go to the website, they're going to make it through the 18 different form fills that we need to get them to make that gift. And the reward for making it through that experience is that we're going to send another email you're not going to open. So we have to rethink this. And I think for me, what I love about this new world is that we can make it human. And what would you do? If you could meet every single one of your supporters, how would you treat them? How do development officers build these relationships? So what we found in direct messaging is to keep it simple and to keep it human. So first, there's 4 things things that we need to do. First, we want to thank them. Second, let's ask for another piece of communication, whether it's an email address or home address or a phone number. Third, what's your story? Then fourth, how do you see yourself making an impact this year? This is powerful. It's all can be powerful at scale. One of our partners, Best Friends Animal Society, did this exact 4-step initial sequence, and they had 2 ladies write back and say they were thinking about writing the organization into their will. That's a several $100,000 a year opportunity. The future of philanthropy is personal, and I know that because I co-found a nonprofit myself. And what keeps me going in the hardest of days is the mission, but more so the people that are connected to the mission. And through direct messaging, we're getting stories of why people are giving and getting involved, and they're sharing their hearts out. And this is a change, right? The future of philanthropy is personal. We're not buying shoes. I don't think the digital funnel in its current construct is going to work for us going forward. Our supporters, they're buying hope, they're buying change, they're buying belonging. They want to feel part of something. They want to share their story, and they want someone to hear it and want to be allowed to participate and be an agent of change. So we know what we're going to get in continuing to run these transactional funnels, and we should. I'm going to continue to run it, right? I'm going to continue to run these funnels because we need to survive. But survival, if we rely on these funnels, we're not going to make it. What we're seeing is a structural decline, continued and compounding decline. And as it declines, as less people are responding, it's getting more costly to fill the top of the funnel. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what's a future like with every organization having one-on-one relationship with each supporter? Okay, section 4. Let's talk about the donor math. So today, most of us support unacquired donors, and it makes sense, right? We focus on the first-time acquisition. Maybe there's something wrong with that, right? Maybe it could be a cheap signal for the new world that we're going into. So when we think about a cheap signal, what does it mean if someone makes a first gift of $30 and it costs us $45 to be able to acquire them? We're making money. That's great, right? But what are we missing out on? We might be missing out on who these people are. So are we getting a cheap signal where we start to optimize and then get that person to make a gift again, right? And we start to see that they're not engaging with what we send them. They're not going to make that first gift, which is why donor retention is so difficult. So it's a second action, right? It's a second action that we're trying to be able to drive, because that second action means that there is lifetime value. It's not just point in time value. We're doing a fundamental shift from point in time to transformational to lifetime. So we have an advocacy organization that I've learned a lot from, and they've been able to start with 0 subscribers and be able to get to over 1,300 in 4 months. And what's interesting about that is that they're really focusing not on that first action, but how can they get the second? And what they've seen is that they are driving multiples of what their email file was producing on existing donors, because they're meeting people where they spend time. They're focusing on the relationship, and that relationship is going to yield a larger lifetime value than just optimizing for that point in time gift. So direct messaging will outperform channels, and you just Google it, right? It works. You have high open rates and high click-through rates, but really what it allows is responses and to be able to talk with people. And we talk with people. My challenge to you is treat every supporter like they've got a massive wallet. And when you do that, when you ask them their story and how they want to get involved, I think you'll find that your supporters don't care less. They just shifted their behavior and expectations. And the real question is, will you? So I'm on a nonprofit board, and I know this could land like a lead balloon if it's not positioned the right way. So next lesson, we're going to explore how to actually communicate the value of lifetime value in relationships in a world where we're all focusing on that point in time gift. Section 5. Okay, brass tacks, followers, engagement, likes. I'm on a board. I don't care. I do not care. Not one bit. Gifts are great, but investments are better. And when we think about investments, I think it's one of the most underutilized word in the philanthropic space, both as we talk to prospective donors, current donors, but as we talk to our board and our executive team. Investments aren't transactional. An investment is inherently built off of a relationship. You're going to put something in, and over time, you're going to yield a return. And today, we want that first gift, and we need to report on it, right? But don't we want the increased lifetime value? Well, those two can be at odds, because you can run digital funnels all day long. You can optimize and on the margins and get a little bit more increase, maybe in a first-time gift. But if we're not learning about someone, then are we really applying appropriate effort to expect lifetime value to increase? So when you're talking with the board, yes, we want to focus on outputs. We want to focus on the cost of acquisition. We want to focus on our retention. But don't we also want to focus on the ability to increase our lifetime value? And that, to me, comes down to relationships. How many supporters do you know? Not just those with a large wallet, but how about the average people? Do you know what their story is? Do you know what they want to do for you? Because that is the backbone. That is the rock that you can build on. That is your foundation to be able to expect good things to happen year over year. And this was me at Stop Source Suicide. Outputs versus outcomes. You so often put your head down and focusing on the day-to-day, right? What we need to do. Knowing that the transformational growth is not going to come from treating people like numbers. They're going to come from treating people like people. So when we talk with the board, right, we want to frame things. Yes, we want to drive outputs. We want to drive point-in-time value, but we also need to increase the lifetime value, and lifetime value is on relationships. So report on that. How many supporters are you getting to know this past quarter? Because that is going to allow you to project out where you're going to go. And this all sounds great, but in the back of your head, you're saying, I'm wearing too many hats. How do we solve for the bandwidth issue? Well, that's the next lesson. Section 6. Okay, I've been working with nonprofits for a long time, and what I've seen that holds them back is budget, bandwidth, strategy, and technology. We think about budget and bandwidth, that's the first place to start, and those two are at odds against each other. It's really a chicken and the egg problem. I think technology is actually cracking that chicken and the egg. The advent of AI is enabling nonprofits to get the answer to the test, right? AI is allowing relationships at scale. And when you're hearing through this conversation about the shift from transactional to transformational, from point in time to relationships, we can't do it today. We can't do it with a team of 1 or 2 people wearing multiple hats. So when we think about AI, it's really the engine to shift from transactional and transformational relationships going forward. And there's 2 things that it does. 1 is segmentation, and 2 is personalization. We think about segmentation as people start to interact with us, they share information about themselves. In my example, in the military, it's really important to understand branch of service. The Army is much, 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 much different than the Air Force, and a million times more different than the Navy, right? So when people start sharing their experience, the technology can come in and auto tag and auto segment and create those micro segments. Why? Because the next step is personalization. Once we have those micro segments, then AI is able to predict and present a suggested messaging, not to one person, but to a group of people that are banded together from segmentation. So both of these are hard, if not impossible, if we thought about this 2 years ago. But today the game has changed. And what I'd suggest to you is that AI is replacing the spreadsheet, not the team. Think about Downey Jr. and Iron Man, right? Without the suit, what is he? Just a loudmouth rich guy? When we think about AI, you're putting on that suit and one person can now do the work of 10. So as we think about it at Good United, nonprofits don't need more software. They don't need more work to do. With technology, with AI, with the right team and the strategy, you can get a solution. You can get the answer to the test. And the result, a low dollar investment, high lifetime value, and opening up a net new growth channel where you're already doing work. And because you're already doing the work, it's an extra 30 minutes a day. So the question isn't if you're going to turn on direct messaging, it's just when. Now you've got the lessons. But the question every nonprofit leader is asking themselves at this point is, where do new donors actually come from in 2026? Because the videos we walk through the why, and that's the how. So click this video here, where I break down the full new donor acquisition motion, the 5-step engine that brings net new supporters into a nonprofit through social and direct messaging, with the exact mechanics for each step. I'll see you there.